What is chess? If you ask me, I'm probably going to have some long-winded response, but I think Rick Knowlton, in his book A World of Chess, says it best. In the first paragraph. Chess is an engaging game of strategy, familiar to most people, played by many and mastered by a gifted few. To the player, chess offers an absorbing complex of logical possibilities. Moments of intrigue and seemingly endless call for the full faculties of logic, invention, and intuition. Yet many who have come to know this game and have played it with great enthusiasm, and many who have deeply studied and even become skilled in the game's most subtle challenges, have very little idea of the extraordinary cultural advent of chess itself, as it has spread and evolved all over the world for centuries. Chess in its modern form fundamentally has three problems in the modern day, all three of which I think this game, Titan's Battalion, solves. The first of which, chess is eventually solvable. Not now, and certainly not by any stretch of the current imagination, but it has the potential to be so pushed to its edge by computers to take away some of the drive that humans have to master it. Second, it is, in perfect play, a draw. At the highest professional level, the draw rate is nearly 70%. When extremely powerful engines play each other, they reach a draw rate of nearly 98%. And that can be dejecting, and it's generally bad for tournament structure. Without massive amount of play time, it causes classical chess with no time limit to fall by the wayside in favor of timed games. And that solution works, but it's not the only solution. And the third problem is chess is not a whole game. It is a fractured game. The country of China would call what we refer to as Chinese chess, Shang-Chi. It is played on a 9x10 board, has very different pieces and rules, and generally weaker. I wouldn't say weaker. Due to the king's safety being so much lower, the game is faster. The game is more aggressive. Your king is always on threat of dying, and it plays very differently, but it is still the same descent, the same game, just in a different form. And it has years and years of history. It has champions that have risen and fallen. It has stories that have been told that we of the Western world will never know, because we are fixated on our version. Japan, the Buddhist monks have spent centuries, that was the game to them, to invent new variations, to play it with their friends and use it as a way to think about the world differently and try to see something beyond the board. Of course, the Eastern world has the giant of Go to go off of the same way the Western world uses chess, but chess itself is fractured. Now, let's get into what this game is playstyle-wise, and hopefully over the course of this video we will answer all three of those questions. Firstly, what makes this game harder for a computer-aided human to play too well, let's say. Now, there's caveats to that statement, of course. Don't at me in the comments about it, please. The player going second selects the battlefield, which is a section of board that belongs to neither player and can vary between games. This greatly increases the opening depth and gives you more to work with. I, here, have selected what we generally consider the primary test board or balance board, P2. It is a 10x2 grid. In order to play this game yourself, you will need dry erase 1-inch grid tiles and a normal chess set, or some other way to represent a slightly oddly shaped board, because we break the convention of rectangles and squares here. You could play on as small as an 8 by 10 board and still be perfectly fine for what I'm going to show you today. You would simply need some sort of piece, say a checker set lying around, to represent the spaces that are not valid. I, here, have placed white in what is the most standard position. Right in the middle, queen on the left, king on the right, white square is a rook on the right side. This would be normal. However, I could have placed swapping these two, or against the edge, either of them. But you'll note, due to board symmetry, that I really only had 3 options, because swapping the king and queen doesn't really do anything. Especially since my opponent can do the same. If I swap my king and queen, if my opponent still wants to play a normal game of chess, they need only swap their own king and queen and mirror what would be a normal game. However, for the sake of being a little out there, I will place black against the edge here, and make sure to place an extra barrier that is not shown in order to show that these are not valid squares, and neither is anything else that has a barrier on it. I, of course, also swapped the king and queen. You'll immediately note that the pawns would not be able to progress forward and promote like they normally would. And that's not entirely true. The pawns move as you would expect inside of the territories, including being able to move forward 2 squares, and passant works as you would expect, and so on. However, inside the battlefield, they can also move, but not capture, sideways. This also greatly increases the number of options and opening depth. Now, as far as piece movement rules are concerned, the only thing left is castling. So long as the spacing is correct and there are no intervening pieces, you could castle anywhere on the board should, there be either 2 or 3 empty spaces between. So the king could castle here, or here, or even, egads, here the king could castle vertically. Now, the choice to allow both pieces to move and castle anywhere, including while you're in or through check, is generally... We play-tested with this as an idea, and it just caused so many things that were restricted to open up. So many fun stories happened across the board due to this rule change that we just had to hold on to it. Most rules, however, have been made for very practical reasons. Now, as I said earlier, the game of chess has a draw rate of nearly 70% at the highest professional level. And we have removed all but one. The only draw thing still in the game is the 50 move rule. And even that, to an extent, has been lessened due to the advent of additional pawn moves. So, let's start with Ko. Now, Ko is a very special beast. It says that previous board positions are not legal in the same game. So you cannot move backward, only forward. And that means that this king exposed on the side with the queen over here about to chase it doesn't really have many options. After, well, let's say we start here. Let's say we start here. The queen can then check the king. The king has only one option. The queen can check the king again, and because back here this board position had been seen previously, The king cannot move here, and therefore this is checkmate. However, let's say the queen instead starts here. The first position in the repeat is a check. So the king gets checked and moves. The queen checks him again, and the king moves. Now the queen cannot check him in the same way again. She has other options, and it is black's turn to make a call. But whatever she does, it isn't immediately the same mate. I would not advise moving here as it is mate in 1, but it's black's turn, and the checkmate move is no longer available. Now this causes a back and forth, a bit of zugzwang appearing in normal check races, and adds an extra layer of dynamics to a lot of positions. It is the rule that I am the most worried about conceptually, and it can be hard to get used to spotting these and calling out, "Ko, you can't do that," and explaining it to them. But once you do, it is extremely rewarding. And app versions of this game, of course, will automatically show you what spaces and pieces you can't move in what ways due to this rule. It also, in king and pawn endgames that would normally be dead positions, due to Ko, you will eventually, possibly, reach a point where one king is threatening the enemy pawn, and the enemy king has no other option except to move backward when normally it could just move to the side and still protect. But due to Ko, that isn't a legal move anymore, and take out the enemy pawn and win due to our next rule, the bear king rule. We have taken this, and it is a fairly common rule in chess variants, and across many games by many cultures, that if no other piece exists on the board except the king, you lose. So this solves the other half of the problem with draw by insufficient mating material. It becomes so much more. We also have eliminated stalemate. You always have the legal move to capture your own king and take it off the board. It is listed in the rules as an option. And due to that fact, you can, quote-unquote, kneel at any time. So if you have no other legal moves, this is your only option. You are forced to surrender. Perhaps there is no honor in kneeling, but it is absolutely one of my favorite rules in this rule set. Stalemate doesn't exist, threefold repetition doesn't exist, and I believe probably draw by insufficient mating material shouldn't exist. I believe that only leaves the 50 move, and due to Ko and bear king and the massive advantage the attacking player has during checks, I think there is no draw in this game. And black, due to the fact that it knows where the enemy is placed, will have the advantage of being able to go into openings that they know better, and having more options for those openings, as it has 6 completely valid starting positions against this wall, and in the middle, with the king swapped with the queen in any of those 3. And thus, this is Titan's Battalion. Now, that is all you need in order to play this game. I will go into answering the third question here in a second, but in the meantime, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. You can catch me live at twitch.tv/RolandTitan, and don't forget to join the playtesting Discord in the description down below. That being said, you don't have to just place chess armies on this. Because it's 10 wide, couldn't you just I don't know. Place a shogi army there. And isn't there a technique that's been going around in the asymmetrical chess game community called engine balancing, where you give a game to an engine, teach the game to the engine, code it in essentially, and it gets better and better at that over time if it's a self-learning, or just give it enough time on opening depth and enough games for data, and you can figure out which one is weaker and slightly tweak the rules in the matchup and do what you need to do to make this balanced for human play with a near 50-50 win-loss ratio on this board against Medieval. Couldn't you balance nearly any chess variant this way against Western chess? That is the true depth of competitive Titans Battalion, and we aren't there yet. We are currently in the process of engine balancing, marketing, and creating this wonderful game, with 5 core battalions already chosen and picked out. Shoguns being shogi, palace being the combination of shangqi and zhengyi, Chinese and Korean chess, respectively. Twin suns being our original invention. It includes Barolina pawns and some very, very special other pieces. And Frost Beast, which includes checkers pieces and placeable go stones in its repertoire. Come join us. Come give it a shot. The other 4 may not be balanced, but this alone, I think, is the best version of chess that has ever graced the earth. Of course, my ego is the size of the planet, and perhaps you can come cut me down to size in the comments and tell me the problems and the things I laid out today. To recap, there is no stalemate due to kneeling. There is no threefold repetition due to Ko. There is no draw by insufficient mating material due to Bear King. And the combination of those make 50 move draw highly unlikely. The opening depth is vastly increased, and give it a shot, especially if you're a professional chess player. Feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions. At the moment, the community is a little small, with about 100 and something total people who know the game, and 5 to 10 active members, of which like 4 are involved in the development process in some way. See ya, YouTube.